What's up, EFD squad? Today we're counting down 10 footballers who held a little bit too much power for their own good. 10. Carlos Tevez. We begin with a man who was both a source of glee and frustration for fans of Manchester City after he crossed enemy lines to play at the Etihad in 2009. The Argentinian was the club's first true star performer following the Sheikh Mansour takeover and netted 53 goals in his first 2 seasons. However, his inflated ego not only contributed to strained relations with the club hierarchy, but also ended up garnering him special treatment. In 2011, Tevez refused to come on as a sub in City's Champions League clash at Bayern Munich, and in response, manager Roberto Mancini vowed the striker would never play for the club again. This seemed to work for Tevez just fine, who had grown sick of life in Manchester and decided to head back to Buenos Aires for a mid-season break. Once back home, he joked about the English weather on TV chat shows and claimed Mancini had treated him like a dog, and once he returned to Manchester, was docked £6 million worth of wages. However, he was allowed back in the squad immediately, helping the club to a First League title in 44 years and showing his manager who was really boss. 9. Pele. One of the most revered players to have graced the football pitch, Pele has become an even bigger figure in retirement. In fact, you could argue that his association with FIFA and politics has helped to cement his legacy more so than anything he did on the pitch. In 1995, the Brazilian government appointed Pele Extraordinary Minister for Sport, a title I didn't know existed until now, and held the position until he was accused of stealing $700,000 from UNICEF in 2001. That corruption investigation came to nothing, and the former Santos star has remained an outspoken member of the footy establishment since. Pele has been a UN ambassador, worked with companies as large as Shell in promoting renewable sports technologies, and even rubbed shoulders with David Cameron during an Olympic summit on hunger in 2012. All this suggests that Pele has his heart in the right place, but he did tell people in his country to forget about political protest and instead focus on supporting the national football team in 2013. So perhaps he's just a tad out of touch. 8. Phil Younghusband. Okay, so many of you won't have heard of Phil Younghusband, but if you live in the Philippines, chances are you see his face on a daily basis. Born in Surrey and beginning his youth career at Chelsea, Younghusband's Filipino heritage meant he qualified to play for the national side, which he did so for the first time in 2006, and since then he's become a national icon. At the time of recording, he is the team captain, has won the most caps with 95, and holds the scoring record with 48. Younghusband's messianic status was cemented when he made his debut for Loyola Sparks, a team with a ground capacity of just 2,000 in 2011. He scored 7 goals in a 15-1 win in the Cup and went on to net 25 over the course of the tournament. But even before then, he was the subject of a number of commercial campaigns due to his Western good looks and celebrity charisma. And even after leaving Loyola for rivals Davao Aguilas in 2017, his public image doesn't seem to have waned. It seems the Philippines' very own David Beckham can do no wrong. 7. Ian Wright. Famously outspoken as a television pundit, it's no surprise Ian Wright was a stubborn character in his playing days, and while at Arsenal, he went toe-to-toe with then-manager Bruce Rioch. Such was Wright's tendency to kick up a fuss, Rioch labelled him Charlie Big Potatoes, with the striker taking issue with the coach's introduction of a passing game to Highbury, ironic given what was to come. Following a raging argument in the dressing room, Wright handed in a transfer request, but he actually ended up staying. Already a club legend, his annoyance with the coaching regime was deemed to be Rioch's problem, and the manager was let go after just over a year in the job. Wrighty, meanwhile, stayed for another 2 seasons, winning the double and breaking the club's scoring record. 6. Wayne Rooney. Throughout his managerial career, Sir Alex Ferguson built a reputation for winning any wars that arose with individuals in his squad, but it can be argued that Wayne Rooney played the power game most effectively with the Scots. Rooney was famously on the verge of leaving Old Trafford for Man City in 2010 and cited a lack of ambition in the transfer market as one of the main reasons for wanting the move. A new £180,000 a week contract was then negotiated for him, such was the club's dependency on its star player. And once Ferguson left the club in 2013, Rooney became an even bigger presence. Considered by the manager to be unfit and past his best, many expected the Evertonian to follow Ferguson out of the door. But David Moyes persuaded him to stay on, and within a year he had been made club captain. Despite his obvious declining performances, Louis van Gaal claimed Rooney was undroppable, and he even sold Robin van Persie and Javier Hernandez to leave the Englishman as the club's only established striker. When he wasn't good enough for a forward role, the Dutchman even shoehorned him in at centre mid. Rooney eventually left Old Trafford in 2017, having surpassed Bobby Charlton's all-time scoring record. He probably exchanged notes with Ian Wright afterwards. 5. Javier Zanetti. Arguably the biggest club legend on this list, the love felt for Javier Zanetti at Inter Milan is largely unmatched elsewhere. And it's not hard to see why. He was a devoted and uncompromising captain, admired as much for his strong principles as he was for his exceptional talent. Zanetti's role as Inter's on-pitch leader meant he was listened to within the club's hierarchy, but unlike many others on this list, the Argentinian used his power with good intentions. The right flanker was known for his work with charities in Argentina and in 2004 managed to convince Inter to do something quite out of the ordinary. At a time when European football had become a global commercial beast, the club decided to donate €5,000 to the Zapatistas, a militant rebel group in Mexico who Zanetti publicly supported. The donation also included an ambulance and football gear and went to impoverished communities in the Chiapas region of the country, while the player himself wrote, "We believe in an unglobalized world." Although a proposed friendly match between the Zapatistas and Inter failed to materialise, Zanetti had nevertheless managed to risk the club's commercial suicide in order to support a cause he believed in. Now that is the work of a powerful man. 4. George Weah. You'd probably have to go to Liberia to find out whether George Weah has too much power or just the right amount. After all, he was elected the country's president in January 2018. The only world leader to have also won a Ballon d'Or, Weah was one of the defining footballers of the 90s, steamrolling defences at will with his pace, power and dribbling ability for the likes of PSG and AC Milan. Weah was one of the world's hardest working attackers, and he has carried the same attitude in his life outside the game, campaigning for peace while his home country was deep in civil war and becoming a UN Goodwill Ambassador. And his political ventures have been equally defined by his determination. In 2005, his presidential campaign led to the formation of the Congress for Democratic Change, and 13 years later, he was finally able to lead the line for his country. On election, Weah reduced his salary by 25%, so let's hope he continues to deliver on his principles. 3. Giorgio Canaglia. One of the few footballers to arrive in America at the top of their game, Italian striker Giorgio Canaglia was a revelation when he touched down in New York in 1976. Joining a Cosmos side that already contained a 35-year-old Pele, Canaglia went on to become the club's all-time top scorer. But it came at a cost. The former Lazio star was power-hungry from the get-go, threatening to buy his own soccer franchise if the club didn't let him play for them, and even criticising his strike partner Pele when he felt he wasn't getting good enough service on the field. When described by general manager Clive Toye as uncoachable, Canaglia replied, "That's because I know more than the stupid coaches." Wow. However, a special relationship with owner Steve Ross and an exceptional goal-scoring record meant he stayed at the club for 7 years, retiring in 1983 with 193 goals in 213 appearances for the Cosmos. A year later, the Italian inherited a 60% stake in the club, but following mismanagement, the franchise folded in 1986, just 4 years after he had fired them to a 4th league title in 6 seasons. Over the coming decades, Canaglia would attempt to buy other clubs stateside and in Italy, but was investigated for money laundering on more than one occasion, and he eventually exiled himself to the US. 2. Lionel Messi. This pick will come as no surprise to most of you. Lionel Messi is the global face of football, and because of that, plus the fact he's also pretty good, he can pretty much demand anything at FC Barcelona. Whilst playing under Pep Guardiola, the Argentinian demanded that €70 million striker Zlatan Ibrahimovic be shifted out to the wing so he could take centre stage, and a later feud with Luis Enrique almost broke the Barca coach completely. And with the likes of Xavi retiring, Neymar leaving and Iniesta slowing up over the years, the club's reliance on their talisman is starker than ever. In November 2017, reports emerged suggesting that the vice-captain was having a say in the club's transfer dealings, favouring Felipe Coutinho over Mesut Ozil and Antoine Griezmann. I mean, that could all be a load of bollocks, but equally, we wouldn't be surprised. 1. Neymar. But taking our number 1 spot is a man who has mastered the art of manipulating football clubs for his own financial gain. It can only be Neymar. The Brazilian was just 17 years old when he began to secure his first big sponsorship deals while at Santos, and was still a teenager when his father made €10 million from a pre-contract agreement with Barcelona. By the time he arrived at the Camp Nou, Neymar was among the world's most marketable footballers and used his superstar image to play the club through the media. threatening to leave as a ploy to gain more lucrative contract deals. And in 2017, things really came to a head. Neymar left for PSG just days after his father qualified for an extra £23 million for a clause in his son's contract. Now that is how you play the system. So those were our 10 footballers who have had too much power in the game. But what do you guys reckon? Any controversial picks yourselves? Let us know as always in the comments below. Now if you've enjoyed this, why not go and check out myself and Zach on Football Mundial? And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe.